While I distract her, you head over to the house and change the locks." Those words pierced my ears like a venomous whisper in the middle of my birthday lunch. Chloe, my daughter, was leaning across the table, speaking quietly into the ear of her husband, Marcus. They thought I wouldn't hear them over the murmur of conversations and the gentle clinking of silverware. They thought I was too distracted cutting my chocolate cake, smiling for the photos that my niece, Tanisha, insisted on taking from every possible angle. But I heard. And the most terrible part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the sheer casualness with which they spoke it, like ordering coffee or commenting on the weather, as if stripping me of my home, the only thing I had built with my own hands over 40 years, was as simple as flipping a channel on TV. Marcus nodded. I watched his eyes dart toward me for a split second, looking to confirm that I hadn't noticed anything. Then he pushed back from the table with an excuse I didn't even register in my mind. Something about running to the bank, an urgent errand, promising to be back soon. Chloe smiled and squeezed my hand over the white tablecloth. "Mom, you are radiant today. 70 years old and you look 50. Lies wrapped in cheap flattery." I watched him walk away down the restaurant aisle, pull his car keys from his pocket, and look back at our table one last time. Chloe raised her wine glass in a silent toast, a coded signal between them, a sign that everything was in motion. 50 minutes. That's how long it took him to return. During that time, Chloe dedicated herself to entertaining me with near theatrical dedication. She showed me photos on her phone of my grandchildren, even though I see them every week. She asked about my health, whether I had refilled my prescriptions, and if I needed help with the grocery shopping for the month. Every question was a calculated distraction, every smile a perfectly rehearsed mask. Tanisha was also at the table. She knew nothing, that was clear. She spoke animatedly about her new job, about a trip she was planning to the Bahamas, innocent and oblivious to the drama unfolding right in front of her. I played along. I nodded, laughed at the appropriate moments, and tasted every dish they brought out. On the surface, I was the pleased grandmother celebrating another year of life. Inside, every second felt like an eternity. Every minute was a reminder that, at that precise instant, someone was trying to steal everything from me. But there was something Chloe didn't know, something Marcus was about to discover very soon. When he finally returned, his face said it all. He walked into the restaurant like a ghost, his skin so pale it seemed translucent. His hands trembled visibly as he gripped the back of his chair. His forehead was beaded with sweat, despite the air conditioning keeping the place cool. Chloe stood up immediately, alarmed. "What happened? Why did you take so long?" Marcus looked at me, then at Chloe, then back at me. In his eyes was something I had never seen before, genuine fear mixed with disbelief. He opened his mouth twice before the words finally came out, clipped and gasping. "Something went wrong. Your mother, the house." He fell into the chair as if his legs had given out. Chloe leaned in urgently, trying to keep her voice low so Tanisha and I wouldn't hear. But I was paying attention, very close attention. "What do you mean, something went wrong? Did you do what we agreed or not?" "I went there, Chloe. I went with the locksmith you hired, but when we arrived..." He paused, running his hands over his face in a gesture of absolute desperation. "The house is no longer in your mother's name. There are new owners, people living inside. They showed me the papers, all legal, all signed at the title company. The sale closed 3 weeks ago." The silence that followed was deafening. Chloe froze, her wine glass halfway to her lips. I watched her brain process the information, her eyes darting frantically, trying to make sense of the impossible. Then, slowly, her gaze landed on me. I continued to smile, calm, serene. I took a sip of my sparkling water and placed the glass back on the table with a delicate clink. Tanisha was still talking about her travel plans, completely unaware of the silent storm that had just broken. "Mom." Chloe's voice was controlled, but I could feel the tension vibrating beneath every syllable. "Did you sell the house?" Yes, honey, I sold it. There was no need to lie, no need to apologize. It was my house, my property, the result of 40 years of work as a nurse at Metropolitan General Hospital, of night shifts that racked my back, of sacrifices she never knew because I made sure she had everything she needed. When? Why didn't you tell us anything? 3 weeks ago. And I didn't have to tell you anything. I didn't need your permission. Marcus remained pale, looking alternately at Chloe and me as if he were witnessing a slow-motion accident. Chloe, in contrast, was regaining color in her face, but it wasn't the natural pink of health. It was the intense red of contained fury. That house was our inheritance. It was the only thing you were going to leave us. That house was mine, Chloe. Mine. Not yours. Not Marcus's. Mine. The words came out firmer than I had planned. Tanisha finally stopped talking and looked at all of us with evident confusion on her face. I could feel the glances from nearby tables discreetly turning toward us. "And where do you plan to live now?" Chloe's question reeked of sarcasm. "Or did you sell your future too?" "I have a new condo. Smaller, more comfortable, easier to maintain, in a building with 24-hour security. I already moved in 2 weeks ago, and the money from the sale is in a well-guarded investment account, generating interest that will allow me to live the rest of my days with dignity." Chloe shot up so abruptly that her chair scraped against the hardwood floor. Marcus tried to stop her, placing a hand on her arm, but she shook him off with a brusque movement. "Do you know what you just did? Do you have any idea how you've betrayed us?" The irony of her words would have been comical if it hadn't been so pathetic. There she was, accusing me of betrayal, when barely 50 minutes earlier she had sent her husband to steal my home. "I didn't betray anyone, Chloe. I protected what was mine." To understand how I arrived at that moment, sitting in a restaurant watching my own daughter fall apart in front of me, I need to go back 42 years, to when I was 28 and had just been widowed with a 3-year-old girl in my arms. Robert died in a construction accident. A poorly secured beam, a 5-second lapse of focus, and my whole world collapsed. He left me with nothing but debts and a rent that was due in 2 weeks. The company insurance took months to process, and when it finally arrived, it barely covered the funeral and the medical expenses we had accumulated during his last days in the hospital. I remember sitting on the floor of our rented room with Chloe asleep in my lap, looking at the 3 $20 bills left in my purse. $60 between us and the street. I found work as a nurse's aide at Metropolitan General Hospital the very next day. I didn't have a degree. I had barely finished high school, but the shift supervisor saw something in my eyes. Desperation, perhaps, or determination. She put me to cleaning instruments and changing linens for $7 an hour. Chloe grew up in the waiting rooms of that hospital. She did her homework while I finished the night shift. She learned to read between the smell of disinfectant and the endless white corridors. By the time she turned 8, she knew how to pick up my order from the cafeteria and bring it back to the nurse's station without spilling a drop. I worked 16 hours a day, double shifts, triple shifts when they offered them. Every extra dollar meant a brick closer to owning something of my own. I saved the money in an old coffee can hidden under my mattress because I didn't trust banks. In 3 years, I saved $200. With that money, I bought a lot. A piece of land without utilities out toward the county line, so cheap that the seller laughed when I asked if the price was real. "Ma'am, there's no water or power out there, just dirt and rocks." I didn't care. It was mine. I hired a contractor who agreed to be paid week by week. Sunday after Sunday, I went to see how the walls of what would be our house were growing. Chloe came with her favorite doll, sitting on the piles of cinder blocks while I argued with the foreman over every penny spent. It took us 4 years to finish it. 4 years of sacrifices that Chloe never truly understood, because by the time we moved in, she was 12 and only remembered living in rented rooms. To her, the house was just where we lived. To me, it was the result of blood, sweat, and sleepless nights. I managed to connect the power by paying bribes that hurt my soul. The water arrived 2 years later when the city finally extended the pipes to our area. By then, I was already a licensed practical nurse. I had studied at night, lugging textbooks to the hospital, stealing hours from the sleep my body desperately needed. My salary went up from $7 an hour to $9, then to $12, and by the time I was 40, I was earning $15 an hour and working 60 hours a week. That was about $3,600 a month, which went toward food, utilities, and Chloe's private high school, because I wanted her to have what I never did. She never went hungry. She never wore secondhand clothes. She never had to choose between new notebooks or new shoes. I made sure of that, even if it meant my own shoes had holes in the soles and my nurse's uniform was patched in places no one saw. When Chloe turned 18 and announced she was marrying Marcus, an insurance salesman she had just met, I tried to reason with her. Wait, honey, finish college first. Have something of your own before tying yourself to someone else. But she was in love, or what an 18-year-old girl believes is love, and there was no way to convince her. I paid for the wedding, $25,000 I had saved to fix the house's leaky roof. But she was my only child, and I wanted to see her happy, so I spent every cent on a white dress, a decorated ballroom, and a meal for 120 guests. Marcus turned out to be exactly what he seemed, a mediocre man with big dreams and small capacity. He sold insurance when he had clients, and when he didn't, which was most of the time, he lived off Chloe's salary from her receptionist job at a dental clinic. They had 2 children, my grandchildren, whom I loved from the moment they were born. But raising 2 kids on one income was impossible, so I helped. I always helped. $50 here, $100 there. I paid for school supplies, uniforms, and medical visits when they got sick. Chloe never said thank you. She simply held out her hand, and I filled the void with bills that represented hours of my life I would never get back. But the house was always mine. That was never in question. It was in my name, paid for with my sweat, built brick by brick with my own decisions and sacrifices, until Robert's brother, my brother-in-law, appeared. He had disappeared from our lives when my husband died and only resurfaced 35 years later with a lawyer and a lawsuit. He claimed that the land where I built my house had originally been bought by his father, my father-in-law, whom I barely knew, and that, technically, there had never been a legal division of the inheritance between the brothers. Therefore, 50% of that property belonged to him. He showed up with yellowed papers, seals that looked legitimate, and a lawyer who spoke in technical terms designed to confuse and scare. He demanded that I sell the house and give him half the money or pay him $50,000 for his share. $50,000 I did not have. I spent 2 years in court, 2 years paying an attorney with every penny I could scrape together, 2 years sleeping 3 hours a night, working extra shifts to cover the legal fees that mounted every month like an incurable disease. Chloe, during that time, remained strangely quiet. She didn't offer financial help. She didn't ask how I was coping emotionally. She only appeared every couple of weeks to ask about the case, what the lawyers were saying, and what the chances were that I would lose the house. Now I understand why she asked with such interest. The judge finally ruled in my favor. My brother-in-law's papers were clumsy forgeries. The land had been legally purchased by me with my money, without any participation from my late husband's family. The sentence was clear. The property was 100% mine, without any debt or obligation to anyone. But the process cost me $32,000 in legal fees. It cost me 2 years of my life. It cost me my health because I developed high blood pressure from the constant stress. And it cost me something more valuable. It cost me seeing my daughter's true nature. Because when the judge ruled and I walked out of the courthouse crying with relief, Chloe didn't hug me. She didn't celebrate with me. She looked at me with something in her eyes that took me weeks to identify. It was disappointment. Disappointment that I had won, that the house was still mine, and that her quiet plan to inherit it soon had vanished in front of a judge who recognized the truth. The months that followed the legal victory were strange. Chloe began visiting me more frequently, but her visits had a purpose I was slow to fully grasp. She arrived with Marcus on Sunday afternoons, always with an excuse. The kids wanted to see Grandma. They were just in the neighborhood. It had been a while since we shared a meal. But I noticed things, small details that a mother learns to detect after decades of knowing her child. The way her eyes scanned the rooms as if taking inventory of every piece of furniture. How Marcus would casually ask about the property value now that the neighborhood had improved. The conversations that abruptly ended when I entered the room. One afternoon, while I was making coffee in the kitchen, I heard them talking on the patio. The window was slightly ajar, and their voices came in clearly. "She's 70, Marcus. She's not going to live forever." It was Chloe's voice, loaded with a coldness that froze my blood. "I know, but we can't just wait for her to, Marcus sounded uncomfortable, as he always did when facing unpleasant realities. "Why not? It's our legitimate inheritance. I'm an only child. All of this will be ours eventually." "Eventually doesn't work for us. The kids need a bigger house now. We need that money now. We're paying rent when we could be living here." "I know. Believe me, I know. But I can't just ask her to give me the house. We just got out of a lawsuit where she fought like a lioness to keep it." "Then convince her to sell it and give you the money, or convince her to put it in your name. Tell her it's to protect it from future legal trouble." There was a long silence. Then Chloe spoke again, and her voice was calculating, thoughtful. "It could work, but I'd have to do it gradually. First, convince her to live with me for a few months. Say the house is too big for her alone. Then suggest she rents it out in the meantime. And finally what? Finally, make her see that the most sensible thing is to transfer it to my name for her own good, for her security." I poured the coffee with trembling hands. Every word was a silent dagger. It wasn't the fact that she wanted the house that hurt me. It was the manipulation, the coldness with which they planned to disarm me piece by piece. I walked out to the patio with the tray of coffee and cookies, smiling as if I hadn't heard a thing. They smiled too. They took their cups, talked about the weather and the grandchildren. Perfect actors in a play I had just discovered had been running for months. The following weeks confirmed my suspicions. Chloe began making comments about how lonely I must feel in such a big house. "Mom, you have 4 bedrooms and you only use 1. Doesn't that seem wasteful?" Marcus mentioned articles he'd read about seniors who suffer accidents in 2-story homes. "Stairs are dangerous at your age, Eleanor. One bad fall, and you could end up in the hospital." Seniors. That word began appearing frequently in their conversations, as if my 70 years had automatically turned me into someone incapable of caring for myself. As if having gray hair and wrinkles meant my brain had stopped working. One night, Chloe arrived with a folder full of brochures. "Look, Mom, I researched retirement communities, beautiful places where you'd have company, activities, and 24-hour nursing staff. I don't need nurses. I am a nurse. But you're getting older, and these places are wonderful. Look, this one has gardens, a ballroom, even yoga classes. And how much does this paradise cost? Well, it's an investment, $6,000 a month. But if you sell the house, you'd have enough for... I am not selling my house to lock myself up in a luxury assisted living facility, Chloe." Her face hardened for a fraction of a second before she recovered the sweet, concerned smile. "It's not an assisted living facility, Mom. It's a community. And I'm not saying you have to do it now, just that you consider it, for your own good." For your own good. Those 4 words became the constant refrain of every conversation. Everything was for my own good. Moving in with them was for my own good. Selling the house was for my own good. Signing papers they wouldn't even let me read completely was for my own good. Marcus tried another approach. He started talking to me about investments, about how money stored in a house doesn't generate interest. You could sell, invest the money, and live off the rent it would generate, about $600 a month without doing anything. I already have my pension from the hospital, it's enough. But with more money, you could travel, treat yourself, enjoy your old age. Old age. Another word that was appearing too often, always loaded with implications of incompetence, need for supervision, and dependence. But what truly opened my eyes was a conversation I overheard by chance 3 months before my birthday. I had gone to drop off a sweater I had knitted for my youngest grandson. I rang the doorbell, but no one answered. Even though Marcus's car was in the driveway, the door was slightly ajar, so I walked in, calling for them. Their voices came from the den. They were speaking on speakerphone with someone who had a professional, cold tone. "So, what you suggest is that we wait for her to have a temporary, incapacitating health problem." It was the voice of an older man, probably a lawyer. "Exactly," Marcus replied. "An accident, a hospitalization, something that justifies her needing help handling her affairs." And at that moment, you would file for temporary conservatorship, presenting evidence that Mrs. Hayes cannot make decisions for herself. "But is that legal?" Chloe asked. "I mean, she's perfectly fine now, lucid, independent." "That's why I said temporarily. A judge could grant you conservatorship for 6 months, renewable based on your mother's health status. During that time, you would have legal power to sell property, manage bank accounts, and make medical decisions." "And if she objects?" "If you can demonstrate that she is not in a condition to object rationally, her objection would carry no legal weight. You would need psychological evaluations, testimonies from neighbors about erratic behavior, that sort of thing." "Erratic behavior that we could suggest?" Marcus said slowly. "I didn't suggest that," the voice on the phone said. "But let's say that if several neighbors reported concerns about forgetfulness, confusion, or personal neglect, that would strengthen your case. And what would your fees cost? $5,000 up front, another $5,000 when the conservatorship is granted, $10,000 in total, which you would easily recoup from the property sale." I left that house without a sound, the sweater still in my hands and my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst from my chest. I walked the 4 blocks home because I didn't trust my legs to drive. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room, looking at the walls I had watched being built brick by brick, thinking about every sacrifice I had made to get here, and thinking about how my own daughter was planning to take it all away, using the very laws that were supposedly meant to protect me. I didn't cry. Crying was a luxury I couldn't afford. Instead, I started planning. The next day, I hired a different lawyer. I didn't tell him about the conversation I had overheard. I simply told him I needed to protect my assets from possible future conflicts. He recommended several options: a trust, a life estate, or simply selling and reinvesting the money into something more liquid and protected. I chose to sell. The decision to sell wasn't easy, but it was necessary. That house represented my entire adult life. Every corner held memories that hurt to touch. The paint smudge on the hallway wall where Chloe had tried to draw butterflies at age 6, the mark on the kitchen door frame where I measured her height every birthday until she turned 15 and refused to continue the childish tradition. The garden I had cultivated with my own hands, where the roses Robert had loved grew before he died. But memories don't pay corrupt lawyers. Feelings don't stop ambitious daughters. I hired a real estate agent recommended by a colleague at the hospital. Her name was Jasmine Cole, a woman in her 50s with astute eyes and a direct way of speaking that I immediately liked. "Mrs. Hayes, this property is worth between $350,000 and $400,000 in the current market. The neighborhood has improved a lot in recent years. I can get you a good price." "I need it to be fast and discreet." Jasmine looked at me with that expression women who have seen enough of the world have to not ask unnecessary questions. "I understand. Family issues?" "You could say that. I've seen it before. Kids suddenly becoming very interested in their parents' well-being when they smell an inheritance. Don't worry. I can have this sold in 3 weeks if you accept a fair price." "How much?" $375,000. I have a young couple looking in this area. They have the money ready. They just need to find the right house. Yours fits perfectly. 3 weeks. That was the time I had to dismantle 40 years of my life and start over, to pack every object, every photograph, every piece of my history into boxes that would go to a place I didn't yet know. "Do it." We signed the papers that same afternoon. Jasmine explained every clause, every legal term, ensuring I understood exactly what I was doing. The sale would be cash, no financing, meaning it could close in less than a month once we found the right buyer. "And where do you plan to move?" she asked as she put the documents in her briefcase. "I don't know yet. I need to find something small, secure, where no one knows where I am. I know a building downtown, condos for seniors, but it's not a facility. They're independent units with 24-hour security, cameras, a doorman. A lot of retired nurses live there. I could get you a one-bedroom for $1,200 a month. Can I see it today?" We went that same afternoon. The building was modern, 6 stories high, with a clean facade and a small but well-maintained garden at the entrance. The doorman greeted Jasmine by name. Clearly, she had brought clients here before. The condo on the 3rd floor was empty and smelled of fresh paint. A small living room with a window facing the street, a kitchen integrated with new appliances, a bedroom large enough for my bed and a closet, and a full bathroom with safety bars already installed. "It's perfect." "You don't want to think about it?" "There's nothing to think about. I'll take it." I signed the lease that same day. I paid 3 months in advance with the money I had saved, $3,600 that hurt to take out of my account, but it was an investment in my freedom. During the next 2 weeks, I lived a double life. By day, I was still the Eleanor that Chloe knew, the available mother, the accommodating grandmother, the older woman who supposedly needed help with everything. By night, I secretly packed clothes, important documents, photographs, and the few objects of sentimental value I couldn't leave behind. Chloe continued to visit more frequently, always with Marcus, always with that expression of concern that I now recognized as completely fake. They brought me food I hadn't asked for. They offered to make repairs to the house that didn't need to be made. They constantly asked about my health. "Mom, you look tired. Are you sleeping well?" "Perfectly, honey." "It's just that you seem distracted lately. Yesterday you called me and said the same thing twice." "Really? I don't remember that." I was lying. I knew exactly what she was doing. She was creating her narrative, documenting symptoms they would later use against me. Each visit was a mental record of supposed forgetfulness, confusion, and signs of cognitive decline that existed only in their convenient imagination. Marcus took photographs. He thought I didn't notice, but I saw him take out his phone and capture images of the house's interior. The furniture, the rooms, everything they would later claim was part of the family inheritance that must be preserved. 2 days before the sale closed, Chloe arrived with a proposal. "Mom, Marcus and I have been thinking, how would you feel about coming to live with us for a few months, just to try it out? You could stay in the guest room, you'd have company, you wouldn't have to worry about the house. And what would happen to this house? In the meantime, we could rent it out, get some extra income that would be good for you. I'd take care of finding reliable tenants, collecting the rent, everything. You'd just have to enjoy being with your family." It was so obvious it hurt. Once I was living with them, once the house was rented out in Chloe's name, it would only be a matter of time before they found a way to take it from me permanently. A signed paper here, a supposed medical emergency there, and I would lose everything without even realizing it until it was too late. "Let me think about it." "There's not much to think about, Mom. It's for your own good." There it was, again. For your own good. As if I were incapable of knowing what was best for myself. "Give me a week." "A week, then. But think about it seriously. You shouldn't be living alone anymore, Mom. Anything can happen at your age." They left that night, and I finished packing. Boxes upon boxes of a lifetime reduced to cardboard and duct tape. I hired a small moving company, one of those that don't ask questions and work for cash. I paid them $600 to move everything to the new condo during a day when I knew Chloe would be working. The sale closed on a Tuesday afternoon at the closing attorney's office. The buying couple, David and Sarah O'Malley, were exactly what Jasmine had promised. Young professionals with a baby on the way, looking for their first home. Their eyes were bright with the same hope I had had 40 years ago when I bought that empty lot. "We'll take good care of your house, Mrs. Hayes," Sarah said with genuine sincerity. "We can feel all the love in every corner." I almost cried. Almost. But I held firm. I smiled. I signed every paper the attorney put in front of me. The bank transfer arrived in my account while we were still in the office. $375,000. Less Jasmine's fees, less closing costs, I was left with $315,000 clear. "What do you plan to do with the money?" the attorney asked as he sealed the final documents. "Invested in something that gives me peace." That same afternoon, I opened 3 different accounts: a long-term investment account that would generate modest but secure interest, an emergency savings account with $100,000 that no one could touch without my personal and physical authorization at the bank, and a regular checking account for my monthly expenses. Everything was solely in my name, with no beneficiaries, no joint account holders, no way anyone else could access that money, even if I was declared incapacitated. The lawyer I hired for preventive measures made sure every account was protected with specific instructions. In case of illness or incapacitation, the bank should contact my lawyer directly, not any family member. Any attempt at conservatorship or power of attorney would have to go through him first. And he had strict instructions to fight every request as if his life depended on it. It cost me another $4,000 in legal fees, but it was worth every penny. The move to the new condo was almost anticlimactic. My belongings took up barely half the available space. I realized how much unnecessary weight I had been carrying all these years. Furniture I never used, clothes I hadn't worn in decades, decorative objects that only collected dust. My new life in the condo began with a silence I hadn't experienced in years. It wasn't the empty silence of loneliness, but a silence full of possibilities. Every morning I woke up knowing that this space was completely mine, that no one would come to judge how I decorated it or suggest it was too big for me. But I knew the silence wouldn't last. Chloe would eventually notice something, and I had to be prepared for that moment. During the first week in my new home, I established a routine. I had breakfast at the small table by the window, watching the city wake up. I went for a walk in the nearby park every morning, meeting other women my age who had also chosen to live independently. In the afternoons, I read or watched TV without the constant pressure of wondering when the doorbell would ring with another casual visit from my daughter. I had given my new phone number only to my lawyer and Jasmine. I kept my old phone active, but left it in the nightstand drawer, checking it only once a day for messages from Chloe. They were predictable in their falsehood. "Mom, I stopped by your house today, but you weren't there. Where are you?" "Mom, I need to talk to you about what we discussed. When can I visit you?" "Mom, I'm worried. You're not answering my calls. Are you okay?" I didn't reply immediately. I waited a few hours, sometimes a whole day, before sending short, vague replies. "I'm fine, honey. Busy with some personal matters." Nothing that would give her real information. Nothing that would allow her to trace what I was truly doing. 2 weeks passed, then 3. Chloe began to grow impatient. Her messages became more insistent, more demanding. "Mom, I need to see you. It's urgent. We have to talk about your future." My future, as if she had any right to decide it. It was Marcus who finally showed up at the house, or what had been my house. David O'Malley called me one afternoon, confused and slightly alarmed. "Mrs. Hayes, there's a man here who says he's your son-in-law. He's demanding to come in. Says he needs to pick up some of your things." I explained that the house is no longer yours, that we bought the property legally, but he insists there must be a mistake. "There is no mistake, Mr. O'Malley. The house is completely yours now. My son-in-law has no right to it or anything inside it. If he continues to bother you, call the police." "Are you sure? He seems very upset." "Completely sure. And Mr. O'Malley, it's possible that more people may appear in the coming weeks making similar claims. Please don't let them in. All the sale documents are in order. You have nothing to worry about." I hung up and poured myself a cup of chamomile tea with perfectly steady hands. So, they had finally found out. I wondered how long it would take them to find me. The answer was less than 2 hours. My old phone started ringing non-stop. Call after call from Chloe, from Marcus, even from unknown numbers I assumed were friends or relatives they had recruited to their cause. I didn't answer any of them. I just sat on my new sofa, drinking my tea, waiting. The voicemails started piling up. I listened to them that night, one by one, like someone listening to a particularly bad play. "Mom, what did you do? You sold the house without telling us? How could you do something like this?" Chloe's voice swung between disbelief and poorly contained fury. "Eleanor, we need to talk urgently. This is very serious. You've made a terrible mistake." Marcus tried to sound authoritative, but only managed to sound desperate. "Mom, please answer. We are so worried. Where are you living now? Why didn't you tell us you were going to sell? We had plans. We had talked about your future." Chloe again, now trying the worried daughter approach. The last message was the most revealing. Chloe had stopped pretending. "You know what, Mom? This is not going to stand. That house was our inheritance. We worked for that. We took care of you, expecting you to be fair to us. You can't just sell it and keep all the money. We're going to fight this legally. Marcus has already spoken to an attorney. We have rights." Rights? What an interesting word coming from someone who had planned to strip me of mine. I deleted all the messages and turned off the phone. I wouldn't need it anymore. The next day, Chloe showed up at the hospital where I had worked for 40 years. She asked for me in human resources. She demanded to know if they had any updated contact information for me in my files. The shift supervisor, Brenda Jenkins, who knew me well, politely explained that the information was confidential and that if I hadn't shared my address with her, the hospital couldn't do it. "She's my mother. She's 70. She sold her house, and no one knows where she is. She could be in danger." Chloe had perfected her distressed daughter tone. "Your mother worked here for 40 years, dear. I know her personally. She is one of the most capable and intelligent women I have ever met. If she decided not to share her location with you, I'm sure she has her reasons." Brenda was not manipulated. I heard about this conversation because Brenda called me that same afternoon on my new number laughing. "Eleanor, your daughter came by today making a scene. Is everything all right? Do you need help?" "Everything is perfectly fine, Brenda. Just a daughter who can't accept that her mother still has the right to make her own decisions." "Ah, I had a similar one. They wanted to put me in a facility to take my house. I showed them I could still run faster than them." She laughed with that deep chuckle I had always liked. "If you need anything at all, call me." "I will. Thank you, Brenda." But Chloe and Marcus didn't give up. They started looking for me systematically. They went to all the places they knew I frequented: the neighborhood church, the grocery store where I had shopped for years, Tanisha's house. Tanisha called me, worried. "Aunt Eleanor, Chloe was here. She says you sold your house and disappeared, that she's very worried about you. What's going on?" "I'm fine, Tanisha. I just made some decisions about my life that Chloe didn't like, but they are my decisions to make." "You sold the house?" "Yes." "And are you living alone somewhere?" "I'm living very well, in a safe place, with my money protected and my peace of mind intact." There was a silence. Then Tanisha sighed. "Chloe asked me that, if I saw you, I should try to convince you to move in with them. She said something about it not being safe for you to be alone at your age." "And what do you think?" "I think you are the strongest woman I know, and if you made this decision, it was for a good reason. But I also think Chloe is genuinely distraught. She says she's going to fight this legally." "Let her. She has no legal basis." "Aunt, what really happened? Chloe has always been complicated, I know, but this seems more serious." I told her, not everything, but enough. The conversation I had overheard about the conservatorship, the plans to manipulate me, the corrupt lawyer willing to help them strip me of my autonomy and my assets. Tanisha was silent for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled with a mix of rage and sadness. "I can't believe she's capable of that. She's your daughter." "That's precisely why it hurts so much." "What are you going to do now?" "Nothing. I've already done what I had to do. I protected my assets, secured my independence, and now I'm going to live the rest of my life in peace. What Chloe does or doesn't do is no longer my problem." But I knew Chloe wouldn't give up so easily. I knew her too well. When she wanted something, she wouldn't stop until she got it, or until reality hit her hard enough to make her desist. And we hadn't reached that point yet. 3 weeks of relative silence passed. She didn't try to contact me directly, nor did she show up at the places she used to see me. That silence made me more nervous than all her calls put together. It meant she was planning something, regrouping, preparing her next move. My lawyer called me on a Friday afternoon. "Mrs. Hayes, I received a notification. Your daughter filed a petition with the court alleging concern for your mental well-being and your capacity to manage your financial affairs." There it was, exactly what I had heard in that conversation months ago. The plan was still in motion, only now I had nothing left for them to take. What specifically does she allege? That you impulsively sold your property without consulting your family, that you have shown signs of confusion and cognitive decline, that you have socially isolated yourself and are unresponsive to communication attempts from your only daughter. She requests a mandatory psychological evaluation and a hearing to determine if you need temporary conservatorship. How serious is this? It depends on the judge. Some take these requests very seriously, especially when they come from direct relatives. Others are more skeptical. We'll need to prepare a solid defense. Do you have any evidence that you are in full mental capacity? I have 40 years of work history as a professional nurse. I have records from my retirement that show I handled all the paperwork myself. I have the entire process of selling my house, where I signed every document with full awareness and with professional advice. Good, that helps. But we will also need an independent psychological evaluation that demonstrates your cognitive capacity, and it would be helpful to have witnesses who can speak about your current mental state. When is the hearing? In 3 weeks. But before that, the judge ordered a visit from a social worker to your current residence to assess your living conditions. Of course. They wanted to see where I lived, how I lived, to look for any evidence of personal neglect or inability to care for myself. It was part of the strategy I had heard months ago. Does Chloe know where I live? Not according to the documents she presented. She claims she has no knowledge of your current whereabouts, which she uses as additional evidence of your supposed mental decline. She says a person in their right mind wouldn't disappear without leaving an address for their only family. How convenient. Mrs. Hayes, I need to ask you something important. Is there any chance your daughter is right? Any moment of genuine confusion? Any significant forgetfulness? Anything she could use against you? I'm 70, not 30. Sometimes I forget where I left my glasses or what I was going to buy at the grocery store, but my mind is perfectly clear. I sold my house because I discovered my daughter planned to steal it from me. I moved without telling her because I don't trust her. Those are not the actions of a confused person. They are the actions of a person protecting herself. Then that is exactly what we will say at the hearing. The psychological evaluation was 3 days later. Dr. Charles Ellington was a forensic psychiatrist with 30 years of experience evaluating mental capacity in legal cases. He gave me memory tests, logical reasoning tests, and temporal and spatial orientation tests. He asked me to solve math problems, recall lists of words, and explain the meaning of common proverbs. Mrs. Hayes, your results are well above average for your age. There is no evidence of cognitive decline, dementia, or mental incapacity of any kind. Your short and long-term memory function perfectly. Your reasoning ability is excellent. From a clinical standpoint, you are completely capable of managing your own affairs. Can you put that in writing? I already have. My report will be available to the judge before the hearing. The social worker arrived at my condo on a Tuesday morning. She was a young woman, probably in her mid-30s, with a tablet in her hand and a professionally neutral expression. Mrs. Hayes, I am Amelia Herrera, the social worker assigned by the court. I need to ask you some questions and observe your current living conditions. Come in, please. She toured the condo slowly, taking notes. She checked the kitchen, the bathroom, the bedroom. She opened the refrigerator and saw it was well stocked with fresh food. She checked the medicine cabinet and saw my prescriptions were ordered and up to date. She observed that the condo was clean, organized, and tastefully decorated. Do you live alone here? Yes. Who helps you with shopping, cleaning, food preparation? No one. I do it myself. Do you have any difficulty performing these tasks? None. I was a nurse for 40 years. I know how to take care of myself perfectly. Why did you move from your previous house? Because I discovered my daughter was planning to take it from me using questionable legal means. I sold the property to protect my assets and moved here to have peace. Amelia looked up from her tablet, her eyes showing genuine interest for the first time. That is a serious accusation. It's the truth. I overheard a conversation between my daughter, her husband, and a lawyer discussing how to obtain conservatorship over me based on supposed mental problems that I do not have. I took preventative measures. Do you have any evidence of that conversation? My word, and the fact that they are now doing exactly what they planned to do, requesting conservatorship based on false allegations of mental incapacity. Amelia wrote for several minutes, then asked me more questions about my daily routine, my social activities, my physical health, and my finances. I showed her my bank statements, my rent payment receipts, and my updated medical records. Mrs. Hayes, I have to tell you that I have evaluated dozens of cases like this. Most are genuine situations where an older person needs help, but some, she paused, some are family members trying to take control of assets before it is legally appropriate. And which do you think is my case? I believe you are perfectly capable of living independently and managing your own affairs. My report will reflect that. 2 weeks later came the date of my 70th birthday. I hadn't planned to celebrate. The idea of celebrating while facing a legal battle with my own daughter seemed absurd, but Tanisha insisted. Aunt, you can't let Chloe steal your birthday too. We'll have a small lunch, just the two of us if you want. But you have to celebrate making it to 70 and still owning your own life. She was right, so I accepted, but with one condition. I would choose the restaurant and would only give her the address that morning. I didn't want to risk Tanisha accidentally telling Chloe anything. I chose a small restaurant downtown near my condo, a cozy place where the food was good and the atmosphere was quiet. I arrived early and asked for a table by the window. Tanisha arrived on time with a small chocolate cake and a sincere hug. Happy birthday, Auntie. 70 years of being the strongest woman I know. We ordered food, chatted about her life, and her travel plans that had finally come together. It was nice to have a normal conversation, without tension, without hidden agendas. We were about to order coffee when I saw something that chilled my blood. Chloe was walking into the restaurant with Marcus. It wasn't a coincidence. The way Chloe scanned the restaurant with her eyes, the way Marcus walked a half step behind her, the determined expression on their faces. They had come looking for me, and somehow they had discovered where I would be. My gaze locked onto Tanisha, who instantly paled. Aunt, I didn't... She called me this morning and asked if I knew anything about you. I told her no, but... Her voice cracked. She checked my phone. She must have done it while I was in the bathroom at her house yesterday. She saw your texts. I am so sorry. I didn't have time to respond. Chloe had already reached our table. Mom, what a surprise finding you here. Her voice dripped sarcasm. Celebrating your birthday with Tanisha, but not with your own daughter. I'm not surprised you came uninvited. It seems to be your specialty lately. Marcus pulled a chair from the table next door, and both sat down without waiting for permission. Tanisha looked at me with pleading eyes, clearly uncomfortable but not knowing how to handle the situation. We need to talk, Mom, about many things. Chloe placed her purse on the table like someone marking territory. We have nothing to talk about. Oh, no. How about how you sold the family home without telling us? How about how you disappeared for weeks without explanation? How about the fact that you're acting completely irrational? Irrational. I repeated the word slowly. How interesting that you use the exact same terminology your lawyer used in the documents you filed with the judge. Her face tightened for a fraction of a second before she regained her composure. I filed those documents because I am genuinely worried about you. Any daughter would. Any daughter who wanted to steal from her mother, you mean? Tanisha gasped. Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Chloe, however, kept her gaze fixed on me. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you do. I know about the lawyer you spoke with. I know about the plan to obtain conservatorship over me. I know you plan to declare me incompetent to take control of my assets. The only thing you didn't know is that I found out before you could execute it. The silence that followed was dense, heavy. The diners at nearby tables had stopped talking and were discreetly looking at us. The waiter, who was heading toward us with coffee, quietly turned around. "You're paranoid," Chloe finally said. "That is exactly the kind of thinking that shows you need help, imagining conspiracies, believing your own family wants to harm you. It's not paranoia when it's true, and I didn't have to imagine it. I heard it directly from your mouth." Marcus intervened for the first time. "Eleanor, I understand you're upset, but you need to see this from our perspective. You sold a property worth almost $400,000 without consulting anyone. You moved without leaving an address. You don't answer calls. These are worrying behaviors in someone your age." "Worrying behaviors? It was my house, bought with my money, built with my labor. I didn't need to consult with anyone to sell it, and I moved without leaving an address precisely because I knew you would come to do this, to manipulate me, to pressure me, to try to control me." "No one wants to control you, Mom." Chloe had switched to her sweet voice, the one she used when trying to convince me of something. "We just want the best for you. You're our mother. We love you. If you loved me, you would respect my decisions. If you loved me, you wouldn't have hired a lawyer to plan how to strip me of my autonomy. That is your version of events, a version distorted by—" Chloe searched for the right words. "By your age, by the stress of living alone, by the natural confusion that comes with aging." There was the carefully constructed narrative again, every word chosen to paint a picture of a confused senior, not an intelligent woman protecting what was hers. "I am not confused, Chloe. I am more lucid than I have been in years, and what I see clearly is that you plan to steal everything from me under the pretense of caring for me." "No one was going to steal anything from you. That house was your inheritance for us, for your family." Chloe's voice rose in volume. Several heads turned openly toward us. And there was the truth, finally without disguise. "It was my money, Chloe, not your inheritance. Not until I die. And apparently that couldn't wait." "Don't say that. That's horrible." "Horrible? You know what's horrible? That your own daughter spies on you, that she plans to declare you incompetent, that she hires corrupt lawyers to strip you of everything you worked 40 years to achieve. That is horrible." Marcus leaned forward, his hands clasped on the table. "Look, Eleanor, let's be practical. You sold the house, fine, but that money is too much for a person your age to handle alone. You could be scammed, you could make bad investments, you could lose everything. Let us help you manage it. We can open a joint account. I can advise you on investments. We'll make sure you're secure." "Secure for whom? For me or for you?" "For everyone. We're family. Family doesn't plan to betray each other." Chloe slammed her palm on the table, making the silverware clink. "Enough, this is ridiculous. Mom, you're coming with us right now. We're going to your apartment, you'll pick up your things, and you'll come live with us where we can care for you properly." "I am not going anywhere with you. I'm not asking. I'm telling you. And I'm telling you that you have no right over me. I am an adult woman in full mental capacity, and I make my own decisions." "The hearing is in 5 days, Marcus said. "The judge is going to hear all the evidence we have. The neighbors from your old house who reported seeing you disoriented, the hospital staff who noticed changes in your behavior before you retired. Everything is documented." Lies. Every word was a carefully planted lie, testimonies they had probably fabricated or manipulated to build their case. Let them present whatever they want. I have my own evidence, psychological evaluations that demonstrate my full mental capacity, reports from the social worker that confirm I live independently without problems, and above all, the truth. The truth? Chloe laughed bitterly. Your truth is that you're stubborn, headstrong, refusing to accept that you need help. That's not the truth, Mom. That's your ego refusing to admit you can't do everything alone anymore. I stood up. Tanisha immediately did the same, placing herself next to me in a gesture of silent support. I've been doing things alone for 70 years, Chloe. I raised a daughter alone after your father died. I built a house alone. I carved a path in a profession alone. And I will finish my days alone. And that means keeping my dignity intact. Mom, please. For the first time, Chloe's voice trembled with something that might have been genuine emotion, or perhaps just frustration that her plan had crumbled. It doesn't have to be like this. We can fix this. We can... Can you what? Can you stop trying to control me? Can you respect that I own my own life? No, Chloe, you can't. Because you never saw me as a person with the right to decide. You only saw me as a source of assets you would eventually inherit. I took out my wallet and left 3 $20 bills on the table, enough to cover Tanisha's and my check with a generous tip. Happy birthday to me, I said without emotion. Tanisha, let's go. This is not over. Marcus stood up too. We're going to fight this to the end. Do it. But let me tell you something. While you were planning how to steal from me, I had already protected myself. The money is invested in accounts you cannot touch. My condo is under the name of a corporation of which I am the sole beneficiary, and I have clear legal instructions on what to do if you try to declare me incompetent. That sounds like paranoia, Mom. Don't you see that? It sounds like intelligence, honey, something you clearly underestimated in me. We left the restaurant under the gaze of everyone present. The 5 days until the hearing were the longest of my life. Not out of fear, but out of anticipation of finally being able to speak my truth in front of someone with the authority to make Chloe and Marcus understand they had lost. My lawyer, Dr. Evan Thompson, prepared me thoroughly. We reviewed every detail of my case, every document, every piece of evidence. He taught me to remain calm no matter what accusations they made, to respond with clarity and precision, and not to be emotionally provoked. They are going to try to paint you as a confused, headstrong senior, he warned me. Their strategy depends on making the judge see you as someone incapable of making rational decisions. You have to demonstrate the exact opposite with every word you say. It won't be difficult. I just have to be myself. Exactly. Be yourself. The woman who built a life from scratch, who worked 40 years as a nurse, who made intelligent decisions to protect her assets. That is the woman the judge needs to see. The morning of the hearing, I dressed carefully. A gray suit I had bought especially for the occasion. Discreet but elegant, comfortable but formal shoes. Light makeup that highlighted my face without exaggeration. I wanted to look exactly like what I was, a 70-year-old woman in full control of her faculties. I arrived at the courthouse half an hour before the scheduled time. Mr. Thompson was already there, reviewing documents in his briefcase. He greeted me with a reassuring smile. Ready? More than ready. Chloe and Marcus arrived 15 minutes later with their lawyer, a man in his 50s with an expensive suit and the expression of a shark. His name was Richard Sterling, according to his ID. They didn't look at me directly, but I could feel their eyes evaluating me, looking for any sign of weakness they could exploit. The courtroom was small, formal, with dark wood walls and the smell of old paper. The judge, Judge Evelyn Thompson, entered punctually, a woman in her 60s with gray hair and thick glasses. Good morning. We are here to evaluate the petition for temporary conservatorship filed by Ms. Chloe Hayes Jordan over her mother, Mrs. Eleanor Hayes. We will proceed with the testimonies. Attorney Sterling, you may begin. Richard Sterling stood up and began his presentation in a firm, authoritative voice. Your Honor, we are here because a concerned daughter has noticed alarming changes in her mother's behavior. Mrs. Eleanor Hayes, age 70, has made impulsive and irrational financial decisions that jeopardize her future well-being. She sold her family property, valued at nearly $400,000, without consulting her only family. She moved without leaving a contact address. She has cut off communication with her daughter. These are behaviors that suggest cognitive decline and a need for supervision. I remained seated, calm, my hands in my lap. Mr. Thompson had warned me that this would be their approach. Let them speak first, show their hand, before presenting our defense. We have testimonies from neighbors who reported erratic behavior. Mrs. Hayes was seen wandering her neighborhood at strange hours. She seemed confused about what day it was. She forgot conversations she had had days before. Lies, all lies, but said with such conviction that someone who didn't know me might believe them. Furthermore, Your Honor, social isolation is a classic symptom of mental decline in the elderly. Mrs. Hayes has rejected every attempt by her family to help her, to maintain contact, even to know where she lives. This rejection of family support is deeply concerning. We request that temporary conservatorship be granted to my client to protect her mother's interests. This is not about controlling her, but about ensuring that the decisions she makes are in her best interest and supervised by someone who loves and cares for her. When he finished, the judge turned to Mr. Thompson. Defense. My lawyer stood up calmly, without rushing. Your Honor, what we have heard is a narrative carefully constructed to justify controlling the assets of a perfectly capable woman. My client is not a confused senior. She is a retired professional with 40 years of experience as a nurse, with an impeccable history of managing her own affairs and completely intact mental capacity. He placed several documents on the judge's bench. Here we have the psychological evaluation from Dr. Charles Ellington, a certified forensic psychiatrist. The results show that Mrs. Hayes has cognitive capacity well above average for her age. There are no signs of dementia, mental decline, or inability to make decisions. The judge reviewed the documents carefully. We also have the report from the social worker, Amelia Herrera, who visited my client's current residence and found her living completely independently in optimal conditions. Her condo is clean, organized, and well-maintained. She manages her own finances, her own nutrition, and her own personal care without any difficulty. Mr. Thompson paused, letting the information sink in. The truth, Your Honor, is that Mrs. Hayes discovered that her daughter was planning to gain control of her assets using the exact mechanism we are seeing today. A petition for conservatorship based on false allegations of incapacity. She took intelligent and completely rational preventative steps to protect what rightfully belongs to her. That is absurd, Richard Sterling interrupted. My client would never— The judge raised her hand. Let him finish, Counselor. Thank you, Your Honor. My client is prepared to testify under oath about what she overheard, but beyond that, the facts speak for themselves. A woman who can plan and execute the sale of a property, who can research and move to a new appropriate residence, and who can manage complex financial investments, is not a woman who needs a conservator. She is a woman who needs her family to respect her autonomy. The judge looked directly at me for the first time. Mrs. Hayes, I would like to hear from you. Can you explain in your own words why you sold your home? I stood up. My voice came out firm, clear, without trembling. I sold it, Your Honor, because I overheard my daughter and her husband planning exactly this. I heard a conversation where they discussed with a lawyer how to obtain conservatorship over me, how to fabricate evidence of mental incapacity, and how to take control of my property. I wasn't going to wait for them to execute that plan, so I protected myself. That is a lie. Chloe stood up. Mom, how can you say that? We would never do something like that. Silence, the judge spoke with authority. Ms. Hayes, sit down. Mrs. Hayes, please continue. I worked 40 years as a nurse at Metropolitan General Hospital. I raised my daughter alone after her father passed away. I bought a lot and built my house with my own money, brick by brick. I defended that property in a lawsuit that cost me 2 years and $32,000. I am not a woman who makes impulsive decisions, Your Honor. Every decision I have made in my life has been calculated and thought through. And your daughter doesn't believe that she could be genuinely worried about you? If she were genuinely worried, she would have respected my decision to sell. She would have asked how she could help me move. She would have celebrated that I secured my financial future. Instead, she hired a lawyer and filed a petition for conservatorship. Those are not the actions of a worried daughter, Your Honor. They are the actions of someone furious because she lost access to an inheritance she believed was hers. The silence in the room was absolute. The judge studied me for a long moment. Attorney Sterling, do you have concrete evidence of the mental decline you allege? Medical evaluations, documented reports, anything beyond anecdotal testimonies? Richard Sterling hesitated for the first time. Your Honor, we have the neighbor testimonies. Neighbor testimonies that saw her confused? Do you have sworn affidavits from those neighbors? Names, verifiable contacts? Are they in the process of being obtained, or are these testimonies your client relayed secondhand? Your Honor, it is common in these cases that— Answer the question, Counselor. Do you have verifiable sworn affidavits or not? Not at this moment, Your Honor, but we can obtain them if we are given time. The judge closed the folder in front of her with a sharp slap. She leaned back in her chair, looking alternately at Chloe and me. Then she spoke in a voice that left no room for interpretation. I have reviewed all the documentation presented. The psychological evaluation of Mrs. Eleanor Hayes shows full mental capacity. The social worker's report confirms that she lives independently without problems. Her financial records demonstrate that she manages her affairs responsibly. I see no concrete evidence to justify a conservatorship, not even a temporary one. Chloe paled. Marcus clung to the edge of the table. What I do see, the judge continued, is a 70-year-old woman who made intelligent decisions to protect her assets from what she perceived as a threat. That perception may be correct or not, but the fact is that she had every legal right to sell her property, move wherever she wished, and manage her money as she deemed appropriate. She did not need anyone's permission. The judge looked directly at Chloe. Ms. Hayes-Jordan, I understand you may be concerned about your mother, but concern is not a legal basis for removing the autonomy of a competent person. Your mother has proven to be in full capacity. This petition for conservatorship is denied. The gavel slammed down, resonating in the courtroom like a final thunderclap. Case closed. You may be dismissed. I walked out of that courtroom with my head held high. Chloe and Marcus remained in their seats, motionless, like statues of salt watching a world collapse around them. I did not turn back to look at them. I had nothing more to say. On the street, Mr. Thompson shook my hand with a genuine smile. You did it perfectly, Mrs. Hayes. It couldn't have gone better. Thank you, Counselor, for everything. What will you do now? Live. Simply live. And that is exactly what I did. The days turned into weeks, the weeks into months. Chloe tried to contact me 3 more times during the first month after the hearing, text messages that swung between pleas and accusations. I ignored them all. Eventually, she stopped trying. Tanisha visited me every couple of weeks. She told me that Chloe and Marcus had had to move to a smaller apartment because they couldn't afford the rent on their previous house, that the children asked about me, but Chloe told them Grandma was sick and couldn't receive visitors, another lie to add to her collection. Doesn't that make you sad, Auntie? They're your grandchildren. It makes me sad that they are being raised by someone who values money more than family, but I can't save them from that. I can only save myself. My life in the condo settled into a comfortable and predictable routine. I woke up early, drank coffee watching the sunrise over the city. I went for walks in the park, where I had made friends, other women my age who had also chosen independence over the false comfort of depending on their children. One of them, Brenda Esquivel, told me her own story one afternoon while we were having tea in her condo. Her son had tried to commit her to a facility to take her house. She had fought legally, won, and now lived in the same building as me, 3 floors up. Our children grew up in a time when everything was handed to them, she told me. They don't understand the value of sacrifice because they never had to make any, And when they see that we have something they don't think about working to get it. They think about how to take it from us. She was right. We had worked so hard to give them a better life that we forgot to teach them to value the effort behind everything. With the money from the sale of my house, after paying all the legal fees and establishing my investments, I was left with $315,000, well protected. The interest generated approximately $600 a month, which, added to my $1,800 pension, gave me $2,400 a month, more than enough to live comfortably. I signed up for painting classes at the community center. I discovered I had a talent for landscapes, especially for capturing the light of the sunset over the mountains surrounding the city. My paintings began to decorate the walls of my condo, replacing old photographs of a family that no longer existed in the way I had imagined. A year after the hearing, I received a letter. It was from Chloe. The handwriting was the same I had known since she learned to write as a child, but the words were from a woman I no longer recognized. Mom, I know I have no right to ask you for anything after everything that happened, but Marcus and I are going through serious financial difficulties. The children need school supplies, new uniforms. I ask you, not as your daughter, but as the mother of your grandchildren, to consider helping us. Just this once, just this once. The same words she had used dozens of times before. Just this once turned into just another time, and another, and another, until nothing was left. I tore up the letter without replying. 2 months later, I learned from Tanisha that Chloe had found a part-time job as a receptionist in a dental office, that Marcus had finally started selling insurance more seriously, compelled by real necessity instead of vague ambition. They were slowly learning to live with what they had instead of with what they expected to inherit. "Do you think she'll ever apologize?" Tanisha asked me. "I don't know. And honestly, it doesn't matter anymore. I don't need her apology to live in peace." I found that peace alone, without expecting anything from anyone. On my 71st birthday, Tanisha organized a small celebration in my condo. Brenda and 3 other friends from the building came. We ate chocolate cake, drank wine, and laughed, recalling our legal and family battles like warriors comparing old scars. "To us," Brenda toasted, raising her glass. "To the women who refused to be invisible, who fought for what was theirs, who chose dignity over comfort. To us," we all repeated. That night, alone in my condo, I stood by the window, looking at the city lights. 71 years old, 43 years since I was widowed. 70 years learning that true love is not shown with pretty words, but with real respect. That family is not who shares your blood, but who respects your decisions. That aging doesn't mean becoming invisible or incapable, but accumulating enough wisdom to know when to protect yourself. I thought about the house I built, about the bricks I laid one by one, about the walls that watched my daughter grow up. I thought about how I had feared losing it, how that fear had almost paralyzed me, and I thought about how, in the end, losing it was what saved me, because I discovered that what really mattered was not in those walls. It was in me, in my ability to get back up one more time, in my determination not to let anyone, not even my own blood, strip me of my dignity. I touched the cold glass of the window with my fingers. 71 years old, and I was just learning to live for myself. It wasn't too late. It is never too late to choose your own peace. My phone rang. It was a text message from Tanisha with a photograph of my grandchildren. Beautiful, smiling, oblivious to all the battles that had been fought in their name. Maybe one day, when they were older, they would understand. Maybe they would come looking for me, and I would tell them this story. I would teach them that loving someone doesn't mean sacrificing yourself until you disappear. Or maybe not. Maybe this story would end here, in this condo, with a 71-year-old woman looking out the window, holding a glass of wine, feeling freer than she had felt in decades. And that was enough, more than enough. It was everything. Did you like my story, and which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.